Okay, photography. So we're going to talk about your manual mode notes. And when we're talking about these, you can refer to the PowerPoint that I posted, but it's probably easiest just to watch this video because I'll be answering the questions as we go. When we're talking about manual mode and how to set your camera, photography is really important because we are talking about capturing light, we're capturing moments, all of these things, but there are three main factors in doing that. And the formula for a good photograph consists of these three main factors. And you're gonna write these right here. So the first one is shutter speed, which we're gonna talk about first. The second one is aperture. And then the third one is ISO. And those are all written right here. And they're also in the PowerPoint. So we're gonna start by talking about shutter speed. Shutter speed is how long the shutter stays open on your camera. The longer the shutter, the more light you let in to your photograph. So when we talk about shutter speeds, you're gonna literally envision a door inside your camera. Envision that door, and you get to choose as the photographer how fast that door opens and closes. If you want to let a lot of light in, you can leave that door open for more time. If you want to let a little bit of light in, you can just make it super fast. Shutter speed has to do with light, but it also has to do with motion. So, as you can see, when we turn our camera on, we can set our shutter speed. Hopefully this camera's not dead. Okay, so here's an example of a fast shutter speed. I have it set to a faster shutter speed, and I want you guys to just listen. That's taking like 20 photos right there. The shutter is set to a fast shutter speed. The doors in the camera are opening and closing at a faster rate. When the doors open and close at a fast rate, that means that it's not letting a ton of light in. That's the one disadvantage. But when we're talking about motion, I'm gonna show you. When we're talking about motion, if I'm moving my hand, you're going to be able to stop motion. I'll try and show you guys this picture. It's having a hard time focusing. So as you can see, even though I was moving my hand the entire time, my hand is still very clear in this photograph. That's because I had a high shutter speed. Shutter speed, when it's fast, is going to stop motion. So what we're gonna do is, while we're talking about shutter speed, we're gonna go ahead and fill out this timeline. You're gonna also put this timeline on the back of your paper. So we're gonna start by labeling this timeline shutter speed. Shutter speed. And we know that there are two extremes of shutter speed. The first is fast, and the second is slow. Then we're gonna put this little tick mark right here. We're gonna put 3, but there's this one, and we're gonna write average. You can erase those for now, but. Okay, so we have fast, average, and slow. When we talk about shutter speed, we need to know how fast our cameras can go. So on these cameras that we have in our classroom, the fastest shutter speed is 1/4000. Do you guys have any clue what that means? That means this camera can take a photo at 1/4000th of a second. That's pretty mind-blowing. When we think about that, what that means is this camera can take, if it had the processing power, which it doesn't, unfortunately, it could take 4,000 photos in 1 second. That's faster than we can blink. That's faster than I can think. All of those things. That's really freaking fast. And at 1/4000th of a second, we can stop hummingbird wings. We can stop a hummingbird wings in mid-flight. When they're racing around your neighborhood in your backyard. I grew up in Vegas. There's so many hummingbirds there. If I took a photograph of a hummingbird at 1/4000th of a second, I could freeze those wings in mid-air and see all the detail of those wings. So at a fast shutter speed, we are stopping, we are freezing motion. We are freezing motion so much that we can stop hummingbird wings. When we freeze motion and we're opening and closing that door at 1/4000th of a second, what does that mean for light? Are we letting a lot of light in or a little light? If you think of shutter speed in terms of time, we are only letting in 1/4000th of a second of light into our photos. So that means that we're letting a lot less light in. So we're gonna write less light, and we're gonna draw our sad little sun. Okay, so there are some reasons why you would want a fast shutter speed. That would be for like, obviously taking photographs of like a hummingbird or something that's fast moving and you want to freeze motion. Awesome. Moving on, we're going to talk about the average shutter speed. The average shutter speed on your iPhone or anything like that is going to be around 1/60th of a second. At 1/60th of a second, we are still going to be able to stop motion. I think the photo that we just barely took was at like 1/400, so it was kind of in between these. But at 1/60th of a second, you're still going to be able to stop the majority of motion, especially if it's like posing for a photograph. But if you're like jumping super fast, you might get a little bit of blur. That means that anywhere where it's moving, where the subject matter is moving, there might be a little bit of blur. So if you were taking a photo and you were just, all of a sudden you sneezed, you might end up a little bit blurry because it's not a super fast shutter speed, but it's fast enough to stop stationary motion. It's fast enough to stop a squirmy kid, okay? So still stops motion, but it doesn't freeze motion. And it's letting a little bit more light in, so now we have like a kind of happy light. So it's slowly letting more light in. And then let's talk about our slow shutter speed. What's crazy is these cameras, the slowest that they can go is 30 seconds. So these little dots, these little tick marks that I do that are actually inches, they also are used in shutter speed to do seconds. So 30 seconds, that means that the shutter is open for a full 30 seconds. And I'll kind of show you what that sounds like. Let's look. I'm not gonna do 30 seconds because I don't wanna like waste your time for 30 full seconds, but. Sorry. Let's do 5 seconds. You ready? The shutter is open right now. Still taking a photo. And then it just stopped. So that was a 5-second shutter. You can go up to 30 seconds with that. That means that during this time when the shutter is open, it's capturing all that light and it's also capturing all that motion. So during this photograph, if you as a photographer are moving, what's gonna happen to your photographs? They're gonna end up blurry. They're also, anything that is moving in your picture will also end up blurry. So if I set my camera up right there and I took a 5-second photo and I was moving the entire time, I would just end up looking like a huge blur. But if I held still for the 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I would be most likely pretty clear. So for a 30-second photograph, this is very, very slow. And any of your motion is going to end up blurred. You're gonna get blurred motion. But during this, you're also gonna get a lot more light coming into your photographs. So much light, actually, that sometimes it's a little overwhelming how much light. We're gonna get more light. Usually when people are taking slow shutter photographs, they're gonna be taking these photographs in a really dark room because if you're letting in 30 seconds of light, you have to be in a dark room in order for your photograph to not end up turning out just bright white. So some reasons for taking a 30-second photograph. If you've ever seen photographs that are light trails, like for example, you set your camera up and you record the stars moving, and you keep that for say 2 hours. Some people have a 2-hour shutter speed, and you let your camera record and slowly the stars are moving. Or you could set it up on the top of a freeway and record it for like 30 seconds, and as the cars are moving, their headlights would become kind of blurred, and that's also really cool. Or you could do it of a waterfall. Set your camera up, and this is a key point as well. When you are doing a 30-second shutter speed, you're gonna wanna set your camera on a tripod. That means that it keeps your camera stationary so that there's no movement happening to your camera. So actually, let's write a little tick mark right here, 1/10. That's probably the last shutter speed, the slowest shutter speed you can take while you're still holding your camera. And even that's kind of pushing it. So anywhere from here over, you're gonna need a tripod. Something to station on, make your camera stable, to stabilize your camera. Okay, so that's shutter speed, and basically that's it. We're gonna go ahead and move on to answering the notes. 1/10 shutter is a faster shutter. The shutter will open for 1/10 of a second. Whereas 10 is a slow shutter, and the shutter will be open for 10 seconds. Awesome. Now we're gonna move along to aperture, and I'm gonna explain that, and then we'll figure out how to combine the two together.